all you glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts, that really, really helps us out. I know we say it every week, but it really, really does. While you're over there, leave us a little review as well. And if you leave us a review, let us know on social media and we'll shout you out. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going?
Aye, good, Mark. Pretty good. Dealing with this bloody storm that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, there has been a storm here. What's it called?
Storm Kira, I believe. Yeah.
Storm Kira, which is now turned to thunder snow here in Scotland.
It's been sort of everything today. Yeah. It's been crazy rain, there's been hail, there's been snow. It's just insanely windy for the last few days. It seemed like a bit of a false dawn on Saturday. We'd been promised this terrible storm and it never really came, and now it's very much here. It
is very much here. It's very much here. Good old British weather, and no more turbulent than in the west of Scotland. So anyway, what have you been playing, Liz?
Well, yeah, I have finally fulfilled my promise to finish The Outer Worlds.
He's finished one. Ladies and gentlemen, he has finished a game.
So yeah, I said last week I would do it by this week, and I did. I basically took advantage of storm weather and sat all day Saturday completing this goddamn video game. These will be my final thoughts on the game at long last. I really enjoyed it, even though it was a bit of a slog for me to get through. That's partly about my gaming habits, what I like in a game, and also how I play games and the time I make for games. Definitely I'm putting that on me, but also some issues with the structure of the game and how certain bits level block you and the way that the story unfolds in certain directions. My last few hours playing this game are the bit that I enjoyed the most, when I was finally over leveled basically for most of what I had on my quest list. And so it became much more an experience of travelling to planets, sort of setting a path to fulfill different quest lines, therefore engaging with the story in a much quicker way, because up till that point I was going to places, realising I wasn't quite strong enough, trying a different mission thread.
See, that's very interesting, because if you go back and listen to the podcast when I was playing this game...
A long time ago.
a long time ago. But I was advocating to bump up the difficulty, because I actually found the game quite easy.
Yeah.
Well, that seems as if you've had quite a different experience there.
It's not that it isn't easy. So, and particularly when you're over leveled, like I was quite literally walking between kind of enemy encampments and just one-shotting everything. I was not in any danger at all.
Well, I felt as if I was over leveled pretty early doors.
Maybe so.
So maybe that point just came earlier for me.
Totally. And I do think that my original setup for the character, you know, where I was spending my leveling up points and the skills I was choosing to focus on, I think I did that sort of wrong in a way. I think I started off with a really clear vision of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to play the game. Then I stepped away to play Death Stranding, and by the time I came back to it, I think I was just trying to be a little bit too sort of centrist about it. I was trying to upgrade everything to a certain extent, and so I was reaching things by the end of the game where I was being presented with dialogue options on things that I felt like I'd been focusing on that were like 20 points higher than I was, and I was just like, really? I've really like messed this up along the way.
See, I have to admit is that the way that I played it is that I really focused in on a few things, particularly dialogue options. So I, again, very rarely came up against a dialogue option of any type of skill, whether it be intelligence or science or stealth or whatever it happens to be, like even like intimidation or inspiration or things like that. I upgraded all those skill points so that anytime they came up in a conversation, I could almost always do it. But that sounds again as if you've had quite a different experience, which is interesting, because that's what the game is about. You know what I mean? You're supposed to have quite radically different experiences playing it, which I think is great for a game like that. That works really well. Often too much emphasis is put on player choice in games, to be honest with you, but in a game like that, in a Fallout style game, that's what it's all about, you know?
Definitely. And being able to follow the story in the way that you want to do is absolutely what it's about, and affecting the universe as it is in this game in a real way, you know, that you're actually having an impact.
Yeah,
and
real tangible sense that you're making a difference.
Yeah, and you can sense that in each place that you go to and how your interactions with the different factions are going to play into it. And that has a really nice kind of crescendo moment towards the end of the game, which I won't spoil. But that was my major positive for the game. I really loved the story for this. That's why I wanted to get into the game in the first place. Like, well before it came out, it was what attracted me to The Outer Worlds, because as I've said plenty of times, Fallout is not my thing. There are elements of the way this game is built that I really don't like, and that I think I would have enjoyed a lot more if they'd just done away with. For instance, the level, we've talked about it before, but the level of collectibles in the game, or consumables rather, that you go...
Yeah, they are effectively meaningless.
They're basically, I use maybe 2 or 3 of them other than the main adrenal kind of health pack.
Yeah, so there's the health system, which again, you get far too many.
Way too many.
You are basically in no danger of dying quite shortly into the game.
Yeah.
and the other consumables do give you boosts to certain stats, but I very, very rarely found myself with any need to use them.
There's so many that it's too difficult really to ever keep track of them. I would have loved it more if there was just 5 or 6 different options and you could load your inhaler with each of them. You know, you would essentially have your loadout that you're like, that's what I like to do every time I inject.
Boost of damage or like boost of speed or something.
Yeah, the time dilation.
And then the health, or boost of the time dilation mechanic. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree, actually.
Yeah.
I think that they are very fair criticisms.
If I was making the sequel to this game, I would dump a lot of that stuff. I think that's quite a brave move for an RPG, and certainly from Obsidian, who sort of created a lot of the foundations for this stuff. But that would have made it a much more enjoyable thing for me. Having said that, I don't like Fallout games, like, I got through this, I enjoyed most of it. I think the balancing towards the ends of the game is kind of rotten. I enjoyed it because I became overbalanced, or overpowerful rather, but the final boss battle, or final battles,
it fell pretty short, didn't it?
It fell short, but also it was like strangely much more difficult than the previous bits I'd been doing when I was just going around tidying up. I don't really
that's
see
supposed to be the final mission. It's supposed to be the hard bit.
Yeah, but
even that, it wasn't that hard.
It wasn't that hard, and it just wasn't. The rest of the universe suddenly felt like incredibly easy to go around and just massacre and do whatever I wanted. And then this last bit, I was suddenly taking huge damage from certain enemies, but still managed all of the bits up until the actual final battle with consummate ease. You know,
I personally, as you said, like the crescendo to the game. Not in the sense of the story. I thought the story kind of tied up quite well, actually. But in the sense of what you were actually doing in the game was a bit underwhelming, really. I'll totally give you that as well. I think these are all completely fair criticisms.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Feel a little bit funny about the actual ending, what it says about a future game, if they are going to do a direct sequel to this. I hope this isn't a spoiler, but there is no post-game. It does sort of just end, and I really wanted to go back into some of those worlds. I had done most of it.
I mean, you can go back into the game just before
a previous save,
boss fight, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I'd done everything that I felt like I wanted to do. So
I was the same. So I done. So the game makes it clear to you, like, this is going to be the end level. So go and do what you want to do, kind of thing. And I did. I went and cleared up what I wanted to do. Came back, done that level. That was that. That was my playthrough. I was quite happy with it. I think that it's equally open to a sequel, and equally could be just a standalone experience, and that be that. You know, I think that it could quite easily go either way, to be completely honest with you. I would love to see them build on this. I think Xbox would probably love to see them build on this. But equally, if Obsidian turn around and say, oh, we've actually got this even better idea for an RPG and we don't want to do that sequel to their worlds, I think Xbox will just be like, yeah, fuck it, do that.
Yeah, exactly. Take some of the ideas forward, but don't worry too much about the setting and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice one, yeah. What have you been playing?
I've just been playing more Doom, man. But more importantly, you've also played Doom now.
Yeah, so
it's good fun, right?
It's incredible, yeah.
It's really good.
After we recorded last week, we went and played Doom, and what was originally supposed to be just a wee shot turned into like what we played
like
for most of the night.
Yeah.
And I echo absolutely everything you said last week. It is a breath of fresh air as a first person shooter goes. It's limitlessly fun. It's not easy as such, but
it's not easy.
But it's
actually, I've played it again since, and it's difficulty's actually starting to ramp itself up
a
bit now.
Because it felt like, I mean, I was just jumping in, and that was my first experience of it, and I felt like I was doing okay, like died a few times, but felt alright about it. But it was still like complex enough, and you had to think much more about your battle sort of strategy than you did do it in Wolfenstein or whatever. Like, I always felt
it wasn't just duck for cover.
No, exactly.
Duck for cover. That's what all the games are. It's even your Call of Duties, your Battlefields. That's what the primary mechanic is when you're in peril. Whereas when you're in peril here, the mechanism to alleviate yourself of that situation is to just keep shooting shit in the face.
Exactly.
Which is amazing.
yeah. The fact that it does encourage you to use things like your gory kills to get back health, like, it's
absolutely.
Suddenly so different. Like your approach to each battle when you are really up against it, you're like, no, I have to keep going.
You also feel so alive and energetic. You can never be stood still, or else you'll get killed.
Yeah.
So you literally have to be continuously moving, and you have to be constantly adapting to the situation that is in front of you. I'm loving it. I really am enjoying it a lot. Like, I'm liking it way more than I thought I was going to. Not quite at the Last of Us levels of enjoying it as much as I thought I was going to, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like, I'm having way more fun
as
with it
a piece of like mindless enjoyment. I was really there.
The story's just kind of happening in the background. I don't really care about that, if I'm completely honest with you, but the actual enjoyment of the minute-to-minute mechanics in the game is superb. I am absolutely loving it.
Bring on Eternal.
Bring on Doom Eternal, absolutely. I mean, if they can build on this in a positive way, that could be something really special, man. Really special. Anyway, it's time for the news. Alright, and news item number 1. The co-founder of Rockstar Games, Dan Houser, is leaving the company, Lewis. It's been revealed that he has actually been on, quotes, an extended break since spring of 2019, which is basically not long after they were probably finished with Red Dead Redemption 2. Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company, have made this statement to their investors.
After an extended break beginning in the spring of 2019, Dan Houser, Vice President Creative at Rockstar Games, will be leaving the company. Dan Houser's last day will be March 11th, 2020. We're extremely grateful for his contributions. Rockstar Games has built some of the most critically acclaimed and commercially successful game worlds, a global community of passionate fans, and an incredibly talented team which remains focused on current and future projects.
Now, this is a big deal, right? It's not quite Hideo Kojima leaving Konami, right? It's not that big a deal, but it's a big deal.
It's getting there, yeah.
The Houser brothers, Sam and Dan Houser, basically are Rockstar Games, along with several other key people, but they are, in essence, the creators of Rockstar and have been GTA in particular, what that has been. So Sam Houser is still staying on, and Take-Two have subsequently said that Sam's position will remain unchanged effectively. But Dan Houser has basically been the lead writer on all the GTA games since GTA London, way back in the day. So I think that this is a very, very significant loss for Rockstar Games. And although his titles are things like executive producer and lead writer, I think that he is going to be a massive miss. I really do.
Yeah, that part about being lead writer to me feels like the key thing. So it seems like the Housers kind of split around production versus kind of creativity, right? Like that seems to be, roughly speaking. I'm sure it's much more complicated than that. But
I'm sure it is, but the point is that they both have a heavy hand in what Rockstar are, what their games have been, GTA in particular, Red Dead and everything in between. They have a very heavy hand in what those games are.
Definitely. And so Dan's role as one of the lead writers, if not the lead writer on almost every game that they've put out in the last sort of 10, 15 years, there's absolutely no way that the whole style, the whole kind of spirit and soul of particularly what a GTA game is, but just any Rockstar game,
absolutely,
it comes from him, or at least it's very much informed by him. I know, for instance, like with Red Dead, there was a bigger team around him, but it
was a more spread out along the different studios as well.
And often speaking, that is how writing for games or for films or for anything works. There's a lead writer and there's other people doing some of the work. So, but it still all stems from the creative ideas that the two Houser brothers had, and to lose one of those is definitely going to be significant.
This as well, I don't know if you remember, just after GTA 5 came out, Leslie Benzies, who was one of the other guys who was there for a long time, and he was the lead developer for all the Grand Theft Auto games since Grand Theft Auto 3, and he left just after GTA 5, and a bit of bad blood it seems as well. Scottish bloke, just always like to point it out when it's true.
Got to,
yeah. So he has also left as well since the last Grand Theft Auto game came out, and now Dan Houser's away, another very, very important person. So there's basically the Housers, then another couple of key people, and Leslie Benzies was definitely one of those other key people, are now not there. So my thoughts are, do we see a radically different GTA 6, or do we see a cheap imitation of a GTA game?
I don't think radically different will be the thing. I mean, bear in mind, Rockstar and Take-Two have the financial clout to bring in anyone in video gaming to take this role on in future. But yeah, it'll be different. I think different might be not a bad thing for GTA. It's kind of been a similar format since it went 3D, essentially. Obviously bigger in scope. GTA Online has kind of changed everything. The kinds of stories they try to tell and the types of satire that they do within that franchise, at least, could probably do with being freshened up a little bit. Again, we've seen that level of creativity that they bring to the Red Dead series, and how different a game altogether Red Dead Redemption 2 was from most other things on the market. So there's a huge amount of creativity being lost there, absolutely. I don't think we'll see GTA 6 be, something unrecognisable from the old ones. Cheap imitation. I mean,
that's them fighting words.
Yeah, that is fighting words. I mean, it would be remarkable if that was, the eventual verdict on a future GTA 6. That would be pretty stunning and would say a lot about how the Houser brothers work together. There's also that whole thing about Dan Houser sort of celebrating the idea of doing 100-hour working weeks.
I think celebrating is a bit strong there, maybe too strong, but he certainly wasn't negative about it. No. He seemed quite proud of the fact he was working 100-hour weeks to get Red Dead Redemption 2 that was finished. But in actual fact, in the current climate of video games, that's not something that we want to celebrate anymore.
Exactly. I guess I wonder, does that play into this? He went on an extended break immediately after that, and now he isn't coming back.
I mean, if that's been your life and he's been there since the dawn of GTA, so he's been there for over 20 years, I think. And if that's been your life for over 20 years, 100-hour working weeks, and you've got as much money as I'm sure that man has, fuck that.
But he seemed to enjoy it, though.
I'm going to buy an island and retire. I mean, he did seem to enjoy it. At a certain point, 100-hour working weeks is not a sustainable lifestyle choice.
And not for his staff either. I guess that's sort of what I'm driving at. Is there an element here of Take-Two saying culture's got to change?
Maybe there is. Hopefully there is. Maybe this does instigate some change in that direction. And to be honest with you, since Rockstar got pulled up on it by Kotaku, basically, the narrative within Rockstar games is that it has got better. Having said that, there have been no crunch periods for them over that period of time. Rockstar are always very quiet about their internal culture. The Housers do not get out in front of the cameras very often. You don't see them getting interviewed in the same way that you see Cory Barlog getting interviewed or Hideo Kojima getting interviewed. They are never there. They never choose to be in the limelight. They always seem quite secretive, and even the way that it's been announced that Dan Houser is leaving, one of the biggest names in the business, is a footnote and a memo to their investors. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I just think that that's because, unlike Sean Layden, who got dismissed basically through a tweet, I think that this is probably his choice and he just doesn't want it. You know, even though the entire industry's talking about it now anyway, he probably just didn't want it. And I believe that there's a bit of we keep ourselves to ourselves culture at Rockstar, which maybe isn't a good thing, but at the very least it seems as if the narrative coming out of that studio is that things were bad. We are trying to improve it, you know, which is, I don't know, at least it's a step in the right direction.
Definitely.
Alright, news item number 2. Sony's chief financial officer, Hirokai Totokai, has said that the PS5's price is yet to be determined. When asked about the price of the PS5 during an earnings call, Totokai made this statement.
First, we must absolutely control the labour cost, the personnel cost. It must be controlled. And the initial ramp up, how much we can prepare initially, we will work on the production and the sales, and we will have to prepare the right volume as we launch this. What is not very clear or visible is because we are competing in the space, so it's very difficult to discuss anything about the price at this point in time. And depending upon the price level, we may have to determine the promotion that we are going to deploy and how much costs we are prepared to pay. So it's a question of balance, and because it's a balancing act, it's very difficult to say anything concrete at this point in time. But when I said smooth transition, we mean that we will definitely choose the optimal approach and that we will try to have the best balance so that we will be profitable during the life of this product.
So he mentions specifically the unknown is basically the competition, e.g. Xbox, and what they're going to do. So is this PlayStation just waiting for Xbox to show their cards and then they just jump out and go, well, same price, bang, just regardless?
Maybe, yeah. I can't imagine that is a feasible strategy for a major company to employ in a sense, because they can't be certain at what point Xbox will reveal their price. They must absolutely, whatever he says, they must have at least a ballpark. They must have
They've got a bracket. I mean, they would like to put this on the market, I'm sure, for like $700. Yeah. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And they've probably got their number that they think is realistic, which is probably around the $500 mark.
$500 is basically what's been kicking about, which is about $450.
Yeah, between $500 to $600, I would imagine, is more or less where this is going to land. And so they might be waiting. We are all presuming that Xbox are going to reveal more or less every detail, including the price, at E3, I suspect.
Yeah, to be honest with you, yes. I do think that Xbox will reveal the price at E3. Yeah.
Given their reaction to Sony saying that they weren't going to be E3, it very much seemed like that is their point to show everything. And there's been so many rumours that we were getting some sort of February announcement for PlayStation.
Well, PlayStation now have launched their PlayStation 5 page of their blog, which was a bit weird, which also had a sign-up that you couldn't sign up to.
Yeah, it didn't work for ages.
And then it vanished for a time, apparently, and then came back. So, not sure what all that was about. God. But I don't know if they're quite ready to speak about that yet. But I think if not February, it must be coming in March. There must be something coming in March, I would have thought. A reveal of the console itself. I think they'll talk about it a little bit. I do not think for a second they're going to reveal that price.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
I think that they will be talking about it in the next couple of months, basically. Definitely, we will have seen the PlayStation 5 by the time E3 comes around.
You think so?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt in my mind. Do you think that PlayStation just match the price, or do they try and undercut?
Again, depends what the price point is. I don't think that Sony...
It's $500. The Xbox comes out, it's $500, bang.
Well, I think if it's $500, they more or less match it. I think PlayStation could even afford to go a little bit higher, not much more than about $50 though.
But that could make all the difference. We know that they're going to sell these boxes at a loss. They always do. It's just about how much of a loss do you want to take? How much of a loss can you feasibly take? Recoup that back in game sales in a quick enough time period. You know what I mean, like I'm sure that there's very high level business minds on that calculation. But often, it was certainly true of the last two generations. The cheapest console won. I know PlayStation came out with a ludicrously expensive PS3 due to hubris, effectively. I know that the reason that the Xbox One console was more expensive than the PlayStation 4 was because they were bundling it with the Kinect originally. But still, the cheapest console won. So I think it would be quite interesting to see if they actually undercut them.
I think your point there about the balance against how quickly you can recoup costs through software sales, through game sales, basically. If you forget about the money that Microsoft has behind them, right, forget that for a second, because obviously that's significant. They can take more losses than Sony could.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I think that Sony is much better prepared to recoup that money. I think they could probably sell each box at a better loss because gamers know that you're going to get good stuff on that platform, you know? Whereas Xbox are almost certainly going to have not a ton of really amazing exclusives, but you're probably going to get a bundle that includes Game Pass, which is a bit of a system seller now.
That's how they're going to recoup their money. It's going to be through their subscription model, I think, anyway. I think that's probably what they're going for. All right, news item number 3. In a financial call, Ubisoft have promised 5 AAA games before April 2021, so that'll be the end of their coming financial year. Ubisoft have said that 3 of those games will be coming in Q3 and 2 would be coming in Q4. So Q3 is right when we're talking about the next gen launching. So I have to assume that all of these games are going to be cross-gen.
Yeah, we have to assume that, surely, yeah.
Ubisoft have also confirmed that 3 of the games will be Watch Dogs Legion, Gods and Monsters and Rainbow Six Quarantine, all of which I assume would be the Q3 games. I've just said that out loud and I've forgotten about Assassin's Creed, which will also be Q3.
Yeah.
So one of them's getting pushed to Q4.
I would say so, yeah. So if there's 2 games coming in Q4, which they haven't confirmed, there's been rumours swirling for so long that it's Assassin's Creed.
Well, Jason Schreier of Kotaku has said that the other 2 games that aren't Watch Dogs, Gods and Monsters or Rainbow Six Quarantine will be Assassin's Creed, which is a surprise to no one, and a new Far Cry game, which means that it won't be Skull and Bones, which Jason Schreier has also said has been through, quote, lots of reboots, and the creative director left in 2018, and that game was supposed to be out at the end of 2018, and we're now in 2020, so that game is over a year past when it was supposed to come out. CEO Yves Guillemot has also said that Beyond Good and Evil 2 will not be part of the next financial year as well, and also this means no Splinter Cell revival will be coming in the next year, which is very sad.
Not in a major sense anyway. I'm still fairly convinced we're going to get like a mobile game or a VR game or something.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, how do you feel about all that?
Well, yeah, to go back to the Assassin's Creed issue, I think that you are right when you paused yourself there, and it seems very unlikely that Assassin's Creed won't come in its usual sort of October-ish slot.
At the launch of the new consoles? Absolutely no way. No way. That is definitely coming out in October.
Yeah, no chance. So it's absolutely got
no
to
chance
be
it's coming out any other time.
Which means one of the other games, those 3 that were already announced,
which I very strongly suspect will be Gods and Monsters, because that is the game we've seen least of those 3.
It seems like the most reasonable one to push into the kind of January-February slot anyway.
Yeah, because it's a new IP, nobody's looking for it as much as the other 2 as well, so it would be the smart one to push as well.
Exactly.
For me.
And given that we were expecting Watch Dogs much earlier in this year, to then push it into its equivalent quarter that it was supposed to be in, but next year just seems like way too much of a delay. So having said that though, do they want a Watch Dogs and an Assassin's Creed coming out so close to one another?
That part of the year is going to be wild now. So we're going to have 3 Ubisoft announcements apparently.
Yeah.
COD will be there, undoubtedly. Cyberpunk is going to be there. Avengers is going to be there. Battlefield or something is going to be there. That end of the year is going to be wild when just as the new consoles are coming out, so just as everyone dumps a whole bunch of money on a new console, they're going to be asked to buy.
And Halo and all these launch titles.
Oh, of course, Halo as well. God, yeah. So Halo will be coming out concurrently with the Xbox launch, certainly. whatever PlayStation launch with as well. Everyone is speculating that will be Horizon Zero Dawn will be coming out in that window as well. That is going to be crazy. Yep. That might be the most congested gaming window in history.
Oh, God.
So just very quickly on Skull and Bones. So this game has been through, quotes, a lot of reboots, according to Jason Schreier, who is well in the know about these things, has subsequently had a new creative director at some point as well, it seems. Do you think that we actually see that game at any point?
Skull and Bones? I don't think so. No.
I think that game might be closer to being shelved than it is to being released.
Dead in the water, you might say.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, he said a pun. Oh, love it.
I don't think there's any demand for this game. I think Sea of Thieves came out, did sort of middling to begin with. Probably is a bit better now.
A better revival, yeah. It's got a good community now, Sea of Thieves.
But I think that did everything that anyone was wanting from a game like that. And if they really want to focus on naval stuff, as Ubisoft as a studio, just put it into Assassin's Creed. It has come from there, essentially. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do think that you're right. I don't think anyone's crying out for that game, and I think that the amount of money they've probably sunk into it, they're never going to recoup back.
No way, yeah.
I think that might be a write-off at some point. And I still think Beyond Good and Evil 2 is quite a ways away.
Well, yeah, so at least, March 2021 then? We're talking about April 2021. Yeah.
All right, news item number 4. During a separate conference call, if you're wondering why there's so many financial conference calls in the gaming world recently, it's because the end of the financial year is upon us. A lot of them run from April to April. So this is Activision's financial conference call to their investors. They have teased several remasters and reimagined experiences coming in 2020. Chief Financial Officer Dennis Durkin said this.
Our business units will continue to tap into our portfolio of beloved IP to bring several remastered and reimagined experiences to our players in 2020, which we'll announce closer to launch.
So this is becoming a bit of a thing for Activision, actually, is to reboot or reimagine their IP. So obviously we had the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, which done very well for them, with Crash Team Racing Nitro Field, which also did really well for them. They had the Spyro Reignited trilogy, which I don't think it did as quite as well as the Crash Bandicoot stuff, but it did do pretty well for them. Way before that, they actually did a Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare remaster.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
They have subsequently rebooted the Modern Warfare series last year as well. And on the Blizzard side of the business, they've just announced Warcraft 3 Reforged, which has went down very badly.
Down a lot of refunds on that game.
Yeah, it's went down very, very badly. Yeah, they've actually set up a website to get automatic refunds, apparently, which is not a good state of affairs. And also there has been a leak of a new Crash Bandicoot mobile game. So talking about reimagined, rebooted experiences, this seems to be becoming a bit of a thing for Activision.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes sense if you've got a few successful titles in that way and you do, as they've called it, have a beloved IP kind of back catalogue to draw on. There's something there.
Debatable.
Well, that's kind of where I was going here. I'm not sure what else from their catalogue, given that this...
Well, do you know what their back catalogue contains? All the Blizzard stuff. Yeah. I think that's what's going to get rebooted.
But then, this Reforged hasn't gone down well.
So Diablo's coming out soon as well. I can see a Diablo 2 reboot happening. Something like that. Yeah. Not necessarily that, but something like that I can see happening. Because Activision, I think, probably think that this is easy money. And it is. And we like it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, in reality, the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy and the Nitro Field, before they kind of fucked that up with the microtransactions and stuff, were great games and they played super good. So if they were going to do this with some other franchises, I would be interested to see what it was. But if it's going down the Reforged route, then they're going to have to do better than that.
Well, exactly.
That was a disaster. Do you know about all that stuff with the cutscenes and whatever?
Yeah, so it was like essentially the original cutscenes from the original game, but the rest of the game was reskinned or something, basically?
No,
right?
No. So they showed cutscenes, like reanimated cutscenes, but when the actual game was getting played, they didn't look anything like that good. Yeah. It was a bit of a disingenuous move, basically, by Activision.
And they made some statement after that, though, that was kind of like, we wanted to keep them in line with what the fans remembered or something, which is just mental.
Absolute bullshit. Yes. We want it to be what we remembered, but we also want it to be an improved reboot. Yeah. That's what we bid for. Exactly. That's what you advertised. That was wild. We don't know a lot about Warcraft here. We were never big into Warcraft or anything like that, but that was an absolute shit show.
Yeah. So they need to do better than that. I'm not sure an Endless Runner mobile game for Crash is the right move.
Oh yeah, so the Crash Bandicoot mobile game is an Endless Runner, which feels very 10 years ago.
Exactly, yeah. And it's it's something that Nintendo did with Mario. It had mixed success. I mean,
well, that was even a bit different. This is going back to like OG Temple Run.
Yeah, exactly.
Endless Runner, which I don't know. I don't feel as though there's a massive market for that.
No.
What the fuck do I know though?
They'll definitely make money out of it, but is that the right thing?
I don't know. In a way, it almost suits Crash Bandicoot though. I kind of get it because there was endless running levels. Well, there wasn't endless running, but there was the levels where you were getting chased by the boulder or whatever. So Crash Bandicoot did have that flavour about it in certain capacities, I suppose, but still it feels like a very, very dated choice. News item 4.5. In the same financial conference call to investors, it was revealed that Call of Duty Modern Warfare had made more money in in-game transactions since they removed the loot boxes and Season Pass from the game. So this is being compared to 2018's Black Ops 4. Call of Duty now has a battle pass similar to Fortnite or Apex Legends and has removed the loot boxes. President Rob Kostic acknowledged, however, that this was part of a number of changes that were made to the game to create a better overall experience for our community, quotes. He also added that since launching Call of Duty Mobile, Activision are now treating all platforms as like a singular community. So I don't know if the mobile purchases factor into these numbers, but yeah, good. On the subject of spending in-game, Kostic said this.
We're looking at engagement and we're looking at daily average uniques. Our engagement is up significantly year over year. That's really great for us to see so many people playing and enjoying this fantastic game. And then on the player investment side, I'd say fans certainly seem to be appreciating the new system quite a bit. We mentioned the growth year on year, but one other thing I might add is that we're also seeing an increase in attach rates in-game to the new system, which I think is a very, very positive sign for it.
I mean, we harp on all the time about how bad loot boxes are.
Yeah.
Call of Duty were one of the worst offenders of this. They've now moved to a battle pass system similar to Fortnite and Apex Legends, as I mentioned. There are loads of games that are doing battle passes now. I mean, they're still making money hand over fist, but in a better way, I guess. I still, for some reason, don't feel very good about this, but it's good that it's not loot boxes, right? Back me up here.
I think so. I mean, yeah, getting your head around all of these different systems and finance models for games these days is difficult. Anything feels better than loot boxes. Anything feels better than aggressive and unfair microtransactions. So the Battle Pass system, I mean, if the players are taking it up at a faster rate or a better rate, a higher rate than they used to do, then that is a sign that it's more in line with what people want. Because it's not like Call of Duty has suddenly got far more popular than it used to be or anything like that.
No,
right?
I mean, Black Ops 4 was pretty popular. I do think that this has been the most popular Call of Duty in a while, but
yep.
I'm assuming that they're working this out on a player-by-player basis rather than on a total amount.
Yeah, you know? But it's not like this used to be a small game that has suddenly become a massive game.
No,
that's going to skew the numbers. You know?
It was always massive.
Yeah. And so this, it feels like a good thing if they are willing to try things like this and it's not hurting them enough financially that they would change it back to the old system, then great. Do have to compare it with the news that we reported last week about EA's, the money that they're making out of live services, quote unquote.
Nearly $3 billion a calendar year.
There's definitely still predatory behaviours out there. There's definitely still more money to be made that way. So we'll see.
It's all about steps in the right direction. When you're trying to move a massive company like that away from one direction to another, it's a series of small steps that you're going to get you there, you know? Mm-hmm. And at least this is one of those steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and one from Call of Duty, which is a franchise big enough to move things in the industry, as we saw with cross-play and cross-provision.
Absolutely, of course. All right, finishing things off with a couple of shout-outs. Speaking of EA, Lewis, they seem to be randomly hiking up the prices of games on Steam. And by randomly, I mean completely randomly.
Yeah.
This mostly affects people in Europe, but it does also affect territories that aren't North America. For some reason, North America, all the prices are fine, it seems. But prices seem to be jumping up completely at random. There's no correlation between the regions. There's no correlation between the games. There's no correlation between adjusting for exchange rates. There's no correlation to how much it costs on their own EA Origins platform, which is almost always cheaper now, so far as I'm aware. In some cases, games have nearly doubled or have doubled in certain territories. And the only game that is not affected by this is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the game that brought them back to Steam in the first place. It's wild. If you are looking to buy any EA games on Steam, just make sure that you're getting the best price. And it looks right now like if you buy from Steam, you almost certainly are not. So just be aware of that. Shout out number 2, PlayStation's Manchester studio has been shut down. This was, quotes, as part of an effort to improve efficiency and operational effectiveness. It seems that the entire studio has been made redundant. The studio was originally created to make VR titles back in 2015 and has in fact been shut down without releasing a single game. And this is also the third first-party studio PlayStation is closed in the UK this generation after Gorilla Cambridge was shut down in 2017 and Evolution was shut down in 2016. So, yep, it's sad times, man. You know, it's never good when studios get closed. But to be honest with you, it sounds like corporate speak when they say to improve efficiency or operational effectiveness, but in reality that is corporate speak for this wasn't making us any money. We were losing money on this studio.
To have not shipped a game in 5 years, even if they were working as a support team, it's still probably too expensive to have a whole studio located elsewhere from the kind of main bodies to do that.
Also, as well as PSVR has done, and it has done very well, I don't think it's taken off in quite the way that they would have to have as many studios as they do dedicated to that. So, I mean, best of luck to all the people that have been made redundant. Hopefully they can find jobs elsewhere in the games industry in the UK, because it is always a shame to lose a studio, especially one here. Yeah. You know?
Do you think it says anything about Sony's approach to VR going forward, or is it simply a cost-cutting?
Honestly, I think it's just a cost-cutting exercise. It's sad to say that because this is people's lives, this is people's livelihoods, you know what I mean? But for them, I think it probably is just a cost-cutting exercise. All right, shout out number 3. The Spider-Man developers, Insomniac, want more people to know how games are written. The reason I've put this in here is because there was a really good Vice article about this. We'll put links in the show notes over at PlayersToo.com, and there's also a book about the writing of the video game Spider-Man. Yeah. Writing of video games is quite interesting, I think, and if anyone else is interested in it, you should go and read this article. I think it's really cool. I actually put out a tweet about it the other day as well. Yeah, it's a really good article. Basically, there's not really any news here. I just want to put in this article because I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think the book sounds brilliant. I think it's a really nice idea. So it's essentially the script for the Spider-Man PS4 game, and yeah, you can see how a studio goes about going about the writing of a game. I think
it's such an interesting process that you don't really get to see.
You never get to see the inside of, yeah.
All right, and shout out number 4. The coronavirus, Lewis, is affecting manufacturing in China, and subsequently that is affecting the video games industry. Now, the situation in China is bad. I mean, the coronavirus is spread horribly there. The amount of cases, the amount of infected people, the amount of dead people is just horrible, absolutely horrible. So the fact that we're talking about this affecting manufacturing of video games is trivial, but nonetheless, we are doing video game news, and this is important video game news. But I don't want this to diminish the wider issue that is the coronavirus. Of course, this is such a first world fucking problem in reality. Nevertheless, Nintendo have confirmed that the Switch production has been hit by the coronavirus and that delayed shipments are now unavoidable. It seems to be that the peripherals are really the thing that's been hit here. Yeah. Specifically mentioned are the Joy-Cons, obviously, and the Ring-Con, there you go. But ultimately, this is probably going to have a knock-on effect. Right now, it's only affecting Japan, but we'll see how that develops. Take-Two have also announced that the Outer Worlds Switch port is also being delayed from March until sometime after April, so actually a nebulous release date now, basically because it sounds as if they couldn't get the game put on the cartridges fast enough to hit the release date. And Business Insider is also now speculating that the next-gen consoles could be affected by the coronavirus. I don't think that the release dates of these consoles is going to be affected by the coronavirus. I think that there may be a shortfall in stock because of the coronavirus. I think that's significantly more likely. Of course, the next-gen launch is quite a long ways away in comparison to the dates of some of this other stuff, I'm sure. So perhaps that shortfall can be made up for. I don't really know, to be honest with you. Just something to be aware of, I suppose. All right, Lewis, and on that note, it's time for a beer, and then we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back with Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is Phil Spencer's comments that Amazon and Google will be the main competitors to Xbox, not Sony and Nintendo. Phil Spencer, of course, is the head of gaming at Microsoft and Xbox. Spencer made this statement to tech website Protocol.
When you talk about Nintendo and Sony, we have a ton of respect for them, but we see Amazon and Google as the main competitors going forward. That's not to disrespect Nintendo and Sony, but the traditional gaming companies are somewhat out of position. I guess they could try to recreate Azure, but we've invested tens of billions of dollars in cloud over the years. I don't want to be in a fight over format wars with those guys while Amazon and Google are focusing on how to get gaming to 7 billion people around the world. Ultimately, that's the goal.
Microsoft Azure being their cloud computing infrastructure.
Yeah. Which basically underpins xCloud, right?
That's which basically underpins xCloud, yes. So that works on the Azure system. Yeah, so what do you think? Controversial
indeed, yeah. When I read those, fighting talk was exactly what I was thinking. I think
getting right on the Sony pony there.
Well, yeah, there's a few things here, right? So first of all, I mean, I can't say that he's definitely wrong, because if you're taking this from a tech perspective, and
this might be controversial, but I don't think it is.
No, like from that whole tech perspective, which is where this article comes from. It's essentially an article about how tech and gaming have kind of come together.
Yeah, it's a really good article. Yeah. We'll put links to it in the show notes.
Definitely.
At PlayersToo.com. So there are Amazon's mentioned in this article, Facebook, Apple, and Google are all mentioned in this article as well. So it's not just about Microsoft.
No, but this is the kind of incendiary part. And so absolutely, Microsoft or Xbox's competitors from a tech sensibility is absolutely those companies. There's no doubt about that. However, I think it's a bit rich for the head of gaming at Microsoft to talk about his competitors not being Nintendo and Sony, when Nintendo and Sony have completely buried him and his company as a gaming platform in this generation.
That wasn't really his fault, though. He came on after that.
I'm not saying it's his fault, but my point being, like, it's very easy when you're in third place to say, oh, we're not even competing competing with them in future. This all comes down to, and we will definitely have a conversation here about streaming and about all these different systems and services, right? But fundamentally, they are a gaming company, or that's what they're supposed to be. And the games that they have released in the last generation have not been up to scratch. And there's not a lot that suggests that that's definitely going to be different. That's the bit they need to focus on. And in that sense, I think they really do have to be considering Sony and Nintendo as competitors, because no matter how good your cloud is, if there's nothing worth playing on it, no one's going to play on it.
Well, I mean, not untrue, obviously. I think Stadia has proved that. But the third parties will be there.
Yeah.
It's not just about exclusives, you know? So if we move to a future where the preferred way to game is through a streaming subscription-based service of some description, whether that be xCloud or Stadia or whoever eventually breaks the mold on that, they are well positioned. They are one of the only companies in the world that is positioned to do that. I think that the other two, in reality for me, are Amazon and Google. I actually don't think that even Apple are in the business of doing that. I don't know how many data centers Apple have around the world in the way that Amazon do or the way that Microsoft do. That's not really their game. In a lot of ways, it's certainly not Facebook's game either. I think they're even further away than Apple. Facebook are one of the top 10 biggest companies in the world, but even still, they're still dwarfed by Amazon, they're still dwarfed by Microsoft, and they're still dwarfed by Google and Apple in reality, you know. But I think if that is the future that we're going to, that will be fought out between those companies. It will be fought out between Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. But I think that they're really pitching a platform here. They're not pitching a system. They want all games to be run on their platform, which means that you would, again, I've mentioned things like this before on this podcast, is that you would launch your PlayStation app from your xCloud subscription, or your Nintendo app, or your Xbox app, and that's how you would play games, or your Steam app, or whatever, you know, and you would use their infrastructure, their literal data centers around the world to stream games from, and everyone else would be on their platform. And that's what I think they're probably going for. That's what Google are probably going for. And that's what Amazon might be going for at some stage. I don't think that that's really a future right now. I think that right now, Xbox, whether they are publicly saying it or not, are fucking competing with Nintendo and are fucking competing with Sony, specifically Sony.
Yeah, absolutely they are.
Of course they are. Of course they are. I don't think anyone's under any illusions otherwise. But I think long term here, I think Spencer's right. Like, I don't think that they are actually competing with Sony and Nintendo. I think that they are actually competing with Google and Amazon. I don't think that he's wrong. I just think that these sound inflammatory now because we're ramping up to the next gen. But I think long term, he's right. Short term, not so much. Yeah,
I basically agree with that. I'm still not convinced that that is the future that we're necessarily headed towards. We're definitely headed in a direction roughly in that field, but I'm still not convinced that gamers by and large en masse are happy to give up ownership entirely in the way that we would need to with subscription models. Things like the lag that we know we'll get when we stream games, that will, unless the technology really, really, really ramps up.
This is the thing, is that we're on the cusp of 5G now, which is, whether you believe it or not, going to be a bit of a game changer. Pun fully intended again, by the way.
I know.
No, seriously, like I do legitimately think that 5G networks are going to be a huge deal for many, many facets of what we consider far off technology, which isn't actually that far off. I think that could be a big deal for cloud-based computing, or accessible cloud-based computing that we could use, and gaming could be a big part of that.
Yeah, it absolutely could, and you're probably right, and you know much more about this field than I do, and I've been sort of following the 5G conversation for a little while, but I still come back to the average casual gamer, your individual person on the street who still probably would just rather buy a box or would just rather get the download. They know they own it. They know it's not going to be taken away from them. You know, all of those things come into play there. And so absolutely, if we do go down this route, Microsoft is competing hands down. I think really with Google, to be honest, until Amazon starts making major moves towards that, you know, Amazon could come out tomorrow and say, we've actually built this whole thing and we're ready to go. Right? They've got that kind of power. And as you were saying, I think Facebook and Apple are at a slightly different speed from all of this.
It's not really their game.
No.
But at the same time, they're wanting a slice of this pie as well, you know?
Well, yeah, but just because you're in the gaming space doesn't mean you're going to make all the same moves as the other companies. I think,
of course not. It's about, I think all these companies in reality are trying to find their niche.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Within this article, it says that the video games industry is worth 150 billion now, which is more than double the films industry and the music industry combined. So video games are like absolutely colossal industry, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. It absolutely is, and it's bigger than film, and it's bigger than music in a significant way. It's also tied to technology at its fundamentals in a way that those industries aren't, which means that it is ripe for companies like this to be involved. And the way the world is going now, and these tech giants will be involved. They'll have to be, quite frankly, because they have the infrastructure that others don't. So anyway, just going into kind of each company a little bit. Amazon, we were just talking about Amazon, right? So Amazon own Twitch, obviously, which is completely dominant in the streaming space. I know that Mixer have made moves to try and change that conversation a bit. I mean, getting Ninja over there and getting Shroud over there, two of the biggest streamers out there, if not the two biggest streamers out there. It was a huge win for them, but in reality, the numbers speak for themselves. Like, Twitch is miles ahead. So that's what I mean about finding their niche. Is that okay for Amazon? Like, are Amazon quite happy just completely dominating streaming and letting Microsoft with Mixer and Google with YouTube fight over the scraps effectively?
I mean, they've got to be comfortable and happy with what Twitch is doing and its level of dominance. Yeah, I can't see Amazon making major strides into the industry, only because that's kind of not their main MO as a company,
There is Amazon Game Studios, which did release that Grand Tour racing game, which looked absolutely god-awful.
Terrible, yeah.
And then they were supposed to be releasing this new MMO called The New World. I don't know if you remember, there was a trailer for that. God, was it E3 maybe? I can't remember. It was a while ago now, which actually looked quite good. I mean, it's an MMO, so it's not really my cup of tea, but I mean, it looked interesting. More to the point, Amazon's AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, is completely dominant in cloud computing right now. I think I read the other day that Amazon AWS has a third of all cloud computing done in the world is done on Amazon AWS, which by comparison, like Azure was like 8% or something like that. So while we're talking about who's going to win the battle of the video game streaming platform, like Amazon's pretty much won the war. Do you know what I mean? And we're just not really talking about it. So Amazon's almost the best placed to do this, to do this game streaming platform, but they're just not, basically. So if they decide that they do want a slice of that pie, I do think that it would be quite an easy thing for them to do. And it's very interesting that the analysts talking in this protocol article think that Amazon streaming platform similar to Stadia is imminent.
Yeah.
And is coming, in fact, he says, before the launch of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I don't believe that. I personally don't believe that, but that is what this analyst is speculating, who clearly follows the industry very closely.
Yeah, there's probably something in that, but you still have to imagine that they need all the contacts, all the networks in gaming that Microsoft do have, which that feels to me like why xCloud is the best place to take off in the way that we're talking about, right? Because they have all these connections. Obviously, Amazon has all the...
They've got the fans, they've got the loyalty.
Yeah, exactly.
There,
exactly that. They've got loyalty. That people know that they can trust them. It's kind of like the Stadia conversation. People know that you can trust Microsoft. I don't know that...
Yeah, because you have been trusting them for
years. You've been trusting them for ages with games, and I don't know that we can definitely trust Amazon with anything, quite frankly, but particularly in the gaming space, we just don't really know what they're up to, what they want to do there. So to move beyond them, I think like the other subscription kind of offers, I mean, we've spoken at length about Stadia. I'm not sure we need to say much more about Stadia.
Look, well, we'll just cover Stadia very briefly. Look, Stadia's come out, it's not been a good launch, right? Putting it lightly, it's been bad, right? It's not been received well. The launch has been bundled. However, that doesn't mean that the future that they are posing isn't the future that we are going to end up in.
Maybe.
Okay. And Google still has YouTube, which is the biggest video platform in the world by a distance so great it is basically a monopoly.
Yeah.
So if they can get their streaming services up and running to compete with Twitch, a lot of people have been dedicated to moving Google in that way in the gaming sphere anyway. Again, a lot of people are kind of dropping off from Twitch, particularly kind of, I would say, middling streamers to move on to YouTube because they can get a bigger slice of that pie, effectively. Do you know what I mean? It's all just people just trying to find their wee bit. But beyond that, I think that Stadia would have to do a lot now to bring it back from this. I think that they've went too soon, effectively.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that someone's going to crack this. I mean, someone's going to crack this cloud streaming services. Do you know about the NVIDIA GeForce Now?
Yeah, like a little bit, but not tons.
This was in beta for 7 years. Yeah. You hear that, Google? 7 years of beta. And everything I've read about it has almost been exclusively positive. Yeah. Right now, the gaming catalogue for it isn't great. Again, as someone who uses a Mac extensively, and I use a Mac for various reasons that I like, for things like recording podcasts, excellent. For things like gaming, awful. Yeah. But if I could use a system like that, a subscription service, and get access to my Steam library, which is what it does. So I think it's compatible with your Steam library. I think Uplay works as well, Battle.net. But you stream your already paid for games. You don't have to rebuy them on a separate platform, which is huge.
That's got to be the system that works, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
Stadia's model is kind of daft in that sense, I think.
Well, you need to buy the game again on Stadia to get crossplay. No, I've already bought the game. Like, either you offer me crossplay or not, kind of thing.
Yeah, what am I buying into here? Am I buying into the service, or are you a game shop as well as a service? Because I don't need that, you know? People might want the service so that they can stream their games, but no one's asking to buy things again and again and have them across multiple systems. So.
No. Nintendo the only one that manages to do that successfully. But it's because of IP, because they've got the games. So that's the most interesting part about all this, is that no one here, apart from Xbox of course, has really got the games to compete. And that's why I think that Phil Spencer or any of these gaming companies thinking that they aren't competing with the traditional gaming market, and Sony and Nintendo, who have weathered many storms and still come out fighting and, quite frankly, on top, I think is incredibly naive, quite frankly, particularly in the immediate future. Maybe not in the long-term future, but in the immediate future. Just to touch on Facebook slightly as well, they still have Facebook gaming, but effectively they are still trying to take a slice of this streaming pie as well. Like, although we don't have a lot to do with streaming, but I mean, it's huge and there's so much money in it. And I mean, Activision Blizzard just announced the other day that the Call of Duty and the Overwatch leagues will be shown on YouTube and not on Twitch, which is huge, which is absolutely huge. I mean, that is millions and millions of dollars in advertising for Google. So I think that more and more we're starting to see this division and people trying to take slices off one another, and it's just about trying to find your niche, I suppose, and like what works on your platform the most. I am not sure that Facebook are really going to be big in this scene, to be honest with you. They did buy a Spanish cloud gaming company called GigaPlay. Play Giga, which seems backwards to me. December just passed there. So, I don't know, maybe they are working towards that. Maybe that ties in with their Oculus Quest somehow. I don't know, because that is their main gaming platform, I suppose, is actually the Oculus Quest. Yeah. And they doubled down on VR in a big way.
But they still haven't really cracked that. They've not made that the mass market thing, even as good as the Quest is supposed to be.
The headset. You know what I mean? They've done the
tech part is good.
Headset. The tech part is good. But unless you have the third-party developers making the games for it, because right now I bet that more Oculus Quests are going to sell when Half-Life Alyx comes out than have sold in the previous 3 years before that.
Yep.
Just because the Index, Valve's VR headset, is just so expensive. To my knowledge, still has wires, or the wireless version is even more expensive again, you know. And Apple, of course, Apple is technically, according to this article anyway, is technically the biggest gaming platform in the world, which is kind of mad to think about, although we completely do not associate it in that way. Like, more people play games on iOS than play games on any other platform, including your Switch, your PlayStation's PC, apparently, as well. I mean, that's wild to think about. 80% of the App Store's revenue is generated through mobile games. I mean, that is insane. That is insane to think about.
Crazy high number.
I know. Obviously, Apple Arcade was launched last year, which we both got onto, and I'm going to come back to eventually because they've taken my Tetris away. I'm going to bring it up at every available opportunity, and EA has betrayed me. No, Apple Arcade launched, and it was incredibly, incredibly popular. It's been successful for Apple. It's been well supported. There has also been rumblings for a long time, and it is mentioned in this article again, that they're going to be doing something with their Apple TV that's supposed to be like for a more casual experience, and is supposed to be taking on the Switch, according to this article. Don't really believe that. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, they're trying. All these companies, to me, are moving into the space. Google was the first one to do something big with Stadia. I'm just waiting to see what the rest of them do, because what they've probably seen with Google is, well, that's how not to do this. Like, so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the Stadia debacle will surely have sort of set alarm bells off for all of these companies that maybe you should take it slower, maybe you should think about your strategy better. And fundamentally, as we've sort of said throughout this, you need to make sure you've got the games there, because no one, as you just said about Facebook, they've cracked it with the headset on the Oculus. But if there's no games there, if there's nothing worth playing on that system...
So the Oculus is a better headset, but the cheaper PSVR is outsold it by quite a distance because there's games there. You know what I mean? There's a lot of games that are PSVR exclusive. And I know there's a lot of good experiences that you can have on the Quest, and if you're looking for the high-end VR experience...
if you're really bought into it.
Oculus or Vive or the Index is... I mean, that's the way you go. It'll outclass the PSVR all day. But in reality, that's the one that everyone bought because
Yeah.
it was a good price point. It plugged into a system you already had. You didn't have to have an insane amount of hardware
100%
to run it properly. And it had the fucking games.
Yeah. And that's to come back to the very original point of all of this. That's why I think it's a very clever and a very strong comment to make from Phil Spencer at this point in time, because he is essentially saying you shouldn't pay that much attention to Nintendo and Sony. He's saying don't pay attention to that because we're the future. We're the future with these other companies, and these other companies aren't really doing very much. So essentially saying we're the future, and that is absolutely not the case in this year or next financial year, because they are competing with Sony, whether they think they are or not. But they have to change that conversation, and that's what he's doing.
Well, he is doing that, and it's also interesting that the comments that came out of Sony that we just discussed are, no, we are directly competing with you, and we are very fucking aware of it, and we will be making moves to make sure we win.
Exactly, yeah. And
so it's very interesting, conflicting comments that we're getting from the heads of these enormous companies. And although I do not think that Phil Spencer's wrong. If the future of gaming is what I think that it's going to be, because we also spoke about the price point and how for consoles forever has always been they make a loss. They make a loss, or they're at the very least scraping to break even. But imagine in not this generation but next generation, Amazon rolls round to PlayStation. And they suddenly say to PlayStation, well, why don't you just not bother making a console this year at all? Like, why don't you just not do that? And why don't you just not make that loss? And instead, we just launch the PlayStation app on every Amazon Fire in the world, and everyone just has it. And then you buy your games on that. It uses our streaming infrastructure, or all our huge data centers across the world, to stream games directly to your TV. They don't need a box. They don't even need to think about buying it or getting controllers or whatever, as long as they've got any old controller from whenever. They can just go onto their Fire Stick, they can navigate to the PlayStation app, they click on that, it brings up your home screen as if you just plugged in your PlayStation console. You go over to the PlayStation store, you buy yourself a nice wee game and you're playing, and it's all good and it's fine.
I mean, that's a vision of a future, and that's not a terrible vision.
And that PlayStation app will be sitting right next to the Xbox One, and right next to the Steam One, and right next to the Nintendo One. So that is genuinely what I think.
So where does Amazon make its money there, though? Is that
Amazon makes its money on all those people paying them to use
to be on the platform,
to be on the Amazon AWS cloud.
So they're making their money from companies, computing. Basically, right? They're making their monies from Sony and Xbox and blah blah blah.
But we also know as well. We know Sony have access to Microsoft's Azure.
Yeah.
So even if it gets down the line and PlayStation do decide that they're going to do some cloud computing, they'll be paying Microsoft to allow them to do that, because Sony don't have the infrastructure for that. They simply don't. They're not even close. So they need to pay someone to do it. And there's 3 options. And for some reason, they seem to have went for their biggest competitor. I'm not sure that it would make sense for Microsoft to allow them to do that in a space that they are directly competing, despite what Phil Spencer says. It's like Amazon's AWS. So, for example, Netflix uses that. Yeah. And hundreds and hundreds of other huge companies around the world use Amazon AWS for cloud computing. It will be no different for Azure or Microsoft. You don't have to have this infrastructure, but some company's going to be winning out of this.
Yeah, you've got to have access to it. Yeah. Absolutely. The one last point I would make, though, just about your vision from the Amazon app thing as well, is where is the technological advancement coming from in the industry going forward? Like you said there, and that's what triggered it for me, you could just use any old controller. But every generation launch, we talk about how controllers change what people are able to do within games, and and like, would ray tracing be happening, for example, if there wasn't consoles that are pushing that as like the next big thing?
Theoretically, consoles are holding things like that back.
They're not. But also your PC box and whatever, like it's the change in technology. But if it's actually just their data centers that are doing all of that, who's driving that?
I'm not sure, but theoretically, these data centers would allow you more computational power in every capacity, basically. To hand that to a developer and say, oh, there are no limits, go. That's where the innovation comes from. It comes from that point. With regards to input devices, it probably won't be much different to now, to be honest. So like maybe playing on a PC or something, like you can play on a PC with an old PS3 controller if you want to, but you might get a better experience using a PS4 controller. Or maybe if the Xbox One controller is like your flavour of choice, then you'll get a better experience playing that. It's not about limiting the experiences or saying, oh, well, you can have this controller or that controller, but that's it. I mean, it's about like anyone can have this experience. It's about having a range of experiences, I suppose. That's what it's about. And again, I think that Phil Spencer's comments are about having a platform. They're not necessarily about right now. They're not about the Xbox Series X versus the PS5. They're about, well, what's happening in the middle of this generation when we decide that xCloud is ready for prime time, and away it goes, and suddenly everyone has an Xbox in the sky. An Xbox in the sky.
Sounds like hell.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind you that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcast, it really, really helps us out. We say it every week, but it really does a huge amount for us. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And if you leave us a review, let us know and we'll give you a shout out on social media as well. I'd also like to remind everyone that our PlayAlong game is Kentucky Route Zero. I've not started it yet, but I've got it downloaded now. I'm very excited.
Nice one.
All 5 acts, but they're all pretty short, aren't they? They're 2 hours.
Yeah, 1 to 2 hours each, and it's all kind of a branching narrative. So I don't think there's any scope to play it any longer than that.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think it is a very set length. Yeah, we'll say. So I'm super excited to get started on that. And I guess we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks.